Good morning, Legacy School. This is Year 7 History, our lesson number 9. We will be talking about power in the Middle Ages. So our objectives will be to try to understand who had power, see what kind of events led to the Norman conquest, and through that discuss who should have been the next king of England. Please take notes from the slides. You can take screenshots to work offline afterwards when you watch this video. Of course, the first question should be, who is the most powerful person in England? I'm sure you will all know it is the king. And the most important person ruling England is the king or queen, the representative of the monarchy or the royal family, of course. Right? The king does not rule by itself. It needs people to support him and protect him as well. So the king always needs alliances to help him keep the country safe. These may refer to friends in the country or people in the country that work for the king. These would be the earls. If you remember, under Athelstan, finally England becomes a unified country, and he divides the country into so-called shires, and these shires are ruled by earls. These earls give support to the king if it is needed. So these would be the friends of the king inside the country, but outside the country he also needs friends. And we mentioned last time that kings forge alliances by marrying into other royal families or marrying their sisters into other royal families to have friends outside the country and keep themselves and their country safe. Now, question arises: is there anybody above the monarchy? Is there anybody who has more power than the king or the queen? Now, you might remember that we have mentioned several times in our lessons the rule of the Catholic Church. And we understand that the Catholic Church has its center in Rome, where the Pope is the representative of the most important representative of the Catholic Church. Now, he sends his people, first monks, who try to convert people of new lands into the new religion. And we mentioned earlier that Canterbury, York, and the Holy Island in the north, Lindisfarne, become centers of Roman Catholicism, Christianity. And from these centers, these monks start converting the people. And obviously, if they can convert a king, a ruler, then their job becomes much easier, because the ruler is going to spread Christianity amongst the people, the population of the country. And this is exactly what happened. Many English kings or Anglo-Saxon kings became Christians very fast, and they started spreading. We mentioned many of them. One of them, Alfred the Great, was probably the most important, who was a very educated man, translated books from Latin and spread Christianity throughout England. So we understand that the Christian church has power. We mentioned the Archbishopric of Canterbury, if you remember, the Kingdom of Kent, which at this time, the time of where we stopped last, our last lesson was King Canute, King Athelstan, who unifies England. Then Edward Ethelred the Unready, who cannot defend England, and the Vikings come back. And soon after that, King Canute, who is a Viking king but rules England as an English king. So this is the time, okay? So the turn of the 10th and the 11th, beginning of the 11th century, when King Canute rules England, right? So at that time, the Catholic Church is very strong, okay? Obviously, it is extremely strong, and the Roman Church needs kings and queens that are going to be on their side, spreading Christianity further. So we can imagine that the Catholic Church has a say in England as well. If you take a look at this picture, this is a very famous historic moment in the history of England and the Catholic Church. You can see 4 knights killing, okay, the Archbishop of Canterbury. His name is Thomas Becket. Okay, so this picture shows, it's a very famous picture. Many sources show us this scene. You can see a monk behind him with a cross trying to protect the Archbishop of Canterbury, but the 4 knights slain the Archbishop because they misunderstood their king. They thought that the king wants the Archbishop to be dead. Just they overhear the king saying, "Oh, this Archbishop is causing me a lot of trouble. I wish somebody got rid of him." They misunderstand it and they kill the Archbishop, which unfortunately creates a huge avalanche of trouble for the king afterwards. But this picture represents the power struggle of the monarchy and the Christian or Catholic Church. You can see the representative, okay, the power of the Catholic Church, the Archbishop. The Archbishop is the most important bishop in a country who oversees, supervises other bishops. Okay, the Archbishop is the most important churchman in the country, basically the right hand of the Pope in a given country. So this picture represents on one side the Catholic Church and its power, and on the other side the knights who are representing the power of the king. Okay, so when the king said something, the knights would perform or do the task. Okay, so the power struggle is clear in the Middle Ages. So we have answered what does this picture tell us about the Middle Ages. Of course, it tells us that there is a power struggle between the church and the monarchy, and the monarchy needs to make sure that that they get the blessing or they get the approval of the Catholic Church. So this is one of these events that leads us towards the Norman conquest, the strengthening of the Catholic Church, and the monarchy slowly realizes that there needs to be the support. They need to have the support of the Catholic Church. So all these events lead us towards the Norman conquest. Okay, so who was more powerful? Obviously, you can say the Catholic Church. Okay, let's take a look at this picture over here, and you can see this is the coronation of Henry IV. A few years later on, obviously not in the beginning of the Middle Ages, but it's just a picture that shows you that you can see the king sitting and the Archbishop of Canterbury putting the crown on the representative of the royal family. And this was very important because the people understood, the regular people understood that the Roman Catholic Church gives the blessing to this king, and the Roman Catholic Church brings the approval of God. So this king has been approved by God. This is basically the message that the Catholic Church is sending to the king. So the king needs the Catholic Church. Yeah, it's not always a very happy relationship, obviously, but the king cannot become a king unless with the support of the Catholic Church. So you can see without the blessing of the Pope and the Catholic Church, nobody could become King of England, right? So it showed the people that the king had God's approval. And it was final. If God said so, it is final. Nobody can question it. Of course, the question arises, did every king have a harmonious relationship with the church? I'm sure you know. The answer is no. Not every king. If the king was very religious and his most important goal was to spread Christianity and the word of God in his kingdom, then definitely did not question any of the decisions of the church. But there were some kings who disagreed with certain decisions, and it caused quite a lot of problems in the history of England. Caused murders, wars, and eventually separation of the English church from the Catholic Church, which we will be talking about a bit later. So we have established that without the blessing of the Catholic Church, no English person could become king, no matter what. All right, so I just want to show you, this is obviously not going to be part of your assessment at any time, but I would like you to understand this family tree shows you the current royal family, which is the House of Windsor. Obviously, the House of Windsor started about approximately 120 years ago with the first king from the House of Windsor. That's not the beginning of the whole royal family, but dynasties come one after another, and this dynasty or this royal family is called the House of Windsor. It starts from George V, and then you can see how his children and their children got the throne. After that, if you see under, just very quickly, under George V, you can see two kings. Again, George VI was the father of Elizabeth II, who is the current monarch. And then after Elizabeth II, the throne will belong to Charles, the oldest son. Now, who should become king? We have discussed this before. The closest blood relative of the king, which is usually the oldest son. If there is no son, then it can be the oldest daughter. Of course, if there is no son, then closest blood relatives, nieces or nephews could be crowned. Also, occasionally it happens that a child does not wish to become a monarch. Then the next blood relative can be crowned. It happened with Edward VII. If you see, okay, let me show you Edward VII. Okay, Edward VII became king, but within less than a year he abdicated, which means that he gave up the throne because he wanted to marry an American lady, and that was against the rules. So rather than not getting married, he chose the marriage and abdicated. So George VI became the king after George V, as I mentioned to you earlier, the father of Elizabeth II. All right, so this is how a royal family works. Was it the same in the Middle Ages, you think? Nicely, without any problems. If somebody doesn't want to be, then the next one without any fights? Of course not. Of course not. There were loads and loads of issues between blood relatives, and people did not accept the choice, or the other blood relatives disputed the successor. Successor is the next king. Now, just very briefly, also, I want to tell you that this is not going to be part of your assessment, but I would like you to see that there are many, many dynasties, royal families in England, in the history of England. So from the Battle of Hastings, from basically the Norman Conquest, 1066, until now, until today, you can see the different dynasties or different houses ruling England: the Normans, the Angevins, the Plantagenets. These were all French. The House of Lancaster, the House of York, then the Tudors, then the Stuarts, and after the Stuarts, a German house, the House of Hanoverians, and Queen Victoria was the last queen of this family. After that comes a king that did not establish a ruling house. His brother became the king. We already mentioned George V. Okay, so between Queen Victoria and George V, there is another Edward. He did not establish a house. Then George V establishes the house of Windsors that married, basically, as you could see, the house today is the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, and the Windsors, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha was the house that they married into. Okay, so this is why we call the current monarchy, or the current dynasty, the House of Windsors, and it is more likely to continue as they have plenty of descendants, many children, and after Charles, the oldest son, Prince William, would be the next King of England. After Charles, of course. Now, let's go back to the times where we stopped last time with King Canute. King Canute creates a huge empire. Not just rule. He doesn't just rule as King of England, but we understood that parts of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark also belong to his empire. Now we understand another very important issue in this period: the power and the strengthening of the power of the Catholic Church. Okay, so with the last Viking king, King Canute, in 1042. The English throne was restored to an Anglo-Saxon king named Edward the Confessor. Now, he was called Confessor because he prayed a lot. He was a very faithful Christian, but he was not as good king as he was a Catholic. He died without a son. So it's a very important event that leads us to the Norman conquest. So the most important events that happen now is basically the Viking. We have a Viking king who, after the death of this king, another Anglo-Saxon king becomes the ruler of England, but he dies without a son. So both kings, you can expect that both kings, the Viking king and Edward the Confessor, will have people in his family that might claim the throne. Okay, and the biggest and most important event is that Edward does not have a son. So the closest blood relative is not available. All right. Now the candidates for the throne, for all kinds of reasons, will be Harold Godwinson, William, Duke of Normandy, and Harald Hardrada. All right. I will tell you more about them just a bit. Let's take a look at the first candidate. Okay, I would like you to pay attention very much, because you're going to have to think about who might be the best candidate. So he was the Earl of Wessex. He married to King Edward's sister. He was promised the English throne many times by Edward, and he successfully governed England during Edward's reign. Okay, so he was basically his right hand. He was an excellent fighter, and he was very popular amongst Anglo-Saxon noblemen. So he was known as a good person. Okay, and the day after Edward died, he was immediately crowned as Harold II at Westminster Abbey. All right, the second candidate would be William, Duke of Normandy, who was a distant relative of Edward the Confessor. Distant relative, okay? Reputation for both bravery and ruthlessness, okay? So he was brave and ruthless. He claimed that Edward had promised the throne to him, because Edward grew up in Normandy and he was close friends with William. Now, a very important factor is that he was sent a banner that was blessed by the Pope, okay, showing his support. So we understand where the support of the Catholic Church lies. Okay, he also claimed that Harold Godwinson, the previous candidate, had sworn an oath of loyalty to him. Harold Godwinson was once shipwrecked on the French coast, and apparently he was taken hostage. And to be let go, he apparently swore an oath of loyalty to William, Duke of Normandy. And the last candidate is Harald Hardrada. He's a Viking. He's the Viking king of Norway and Denmark. He had the support of Harald Godwinson's brother, Tostig Godwinson, who was angry with his own brother. That's why he went against him. He was angry with his own brother because he took his power and he took his wealth away from him after an argument. All right, so Tostig Godwinson supported Harald. He also believed that he should get the throne because he was a Viking and he was a descendant of King Canute, so he was a relative to King Canute. So your homework now, please take notes from the slides as we mentioned, then think about which candidate you think would be the best or who should get the throne, all right? And send me a voice message, just a quick voice message with your opinion. Okay, so after reading and considering who should get the throne after Edward the Confessor and why you think he is the right candidate. Okay, thank you very much. This was the lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned a lot. I might be sending you another lesson if next week is also, we are going to drop one lesson on Sunday. So take care of yourselves. See you soon, inshallah. Bye.